Never in the history of the world has physical fitness been more sought after than today. Um, you have more men pursuing aesthetic fitness than ever before. When I say aesthetic fitness, I mean precisely that, aesthetic fitness, because most men pursue fitness, or go to the gym rather, to sculpt a body that is desirable enough for the opposite sex to for them to get laid. So that's aesthetic fitness. There is, of course, a respectable minority that pursue gymming or that go to the gymnasium for the sole purpose of the self discipline that it brings. But that is, of course, a minority, a very respectful minority, but the majority pursue it for aesthetic reasons. But even after that kind of manic pursuit for peak physical performance, you're still the weakest men to ever exist in the history of the world. Your grandparents, your parents, your fathers could easily beat you at anything from arm wrestling to full on wrestling, but they never went to the gym. So, why is it that we, the modern 21st century men, are in such a sterile condition? What happened? What went wrong? Is it the years of social conditioning, where we've been led to believe that masculinity is somehow bad and the root cause of all that is evil in the world, under the guise of patriarchy, obviously? Is it the lack of role models? Is it something in our diet that is making us more emasculated by the day? Is it feminists' narrative that masculinity is somehow toxic? I believe it's all those reasons. It's the lack of role models, it's the narrative that men are potentially bad and masculinity is somehow unneeded in its most primitive and primal state. So let us explore this a little further and understand how and what went wrong, rather. So I personally believe, this is my own personal opinion, so don't take it with a grain of salt. I personally believe that men, Indian men specifically, are extremely out of touch with their natural state. Now, what I mean by that is, um, you wake up in the morning, you wear uncomfortable shoes and you wear uncomfortable clothes, and you go to work in a job that you absolutely detest, in a confined cubicle of a space that you sit in like an animal in a zoo, and you sit in that uncomfortable state in your uncomfortable shoes. You sit in the most unnatural environment known to man. There is no tree nearby, there is no soil under your feet. It's the most divorced environment from the natural world. A glass building with cardboard cubicles, and you sit there and you sit amongst people who you don't enjoy the company of. You listen to their vapid, vacuous nonsense, and you take your cigarette break and you take your coffee break, and you detest those conversations and you dread those conversations. So you alienate yourself a little more every day, emasculating yourself every day, wearing a mask every day, never ever testing your limits, never knowing your potential, never even trying to see if there is another way to live. And you live in this subjugated way because it's comfortable. I mean, it's painful for the psyche, but it's physically not as strenuous. But it makes you weak. It makes you weak over time. It makes you terribly, terribly, terribly weak. You become weak because you're so away from how the natural state of human beings is, the natural state of man, very specifically. Sure, every now and then you take a vacation with your teammates or you take a vacation with your friends and go to the mountains, but all you do is drink and then you go off to sleep and then you come back. So, what was the point of going there in the first place? You never test your limits, you never test your mettle, you never have an awakening of sorts that tells you that, alright, now you're strong. You never experience strength because you never put yourself in a situation where strength is needed. You can lift all the weights that you want, but that is not going to make you feel strong. You're going to feel terribly weak every day, weaker than the last day. So there's a reason why battle hardened men, any culture, you take ancient Rome for that matter, anyone from a prefect to a tribune, often they used to choose an early retirement and get a piece of land for the services that they provided and live away from society. Why would they do that? Why do you think that retired army personnel choose after their retirement to go and live in a farmhouse? Why do they not want to live in cities? Why not in tall skyscrapers? Why do they desire this lack of company and a more attuned relationship with nature? Why do you think they need that? Why do you think Jesus went in the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights? Why do you think Buddha didn't attain enlightenment in his house? Why did he have to meditate under a tree? Why? Why do you think Shiva, as a concept and as a god, resides in the Himalayas away from human habitation? What is it in the wilds, in the woods, in the desolate landscapes that is so appealing that people find a certain sense of enlightenment, a certain sense of awareness? Now, I can't tell you what it feels like, but there is truth in the woods that you will never find in the city. You will never feel strong because strength would never be needed. You will always be comfortable no matter how monastic of a life you're living in the city. If you truly want to feel strong, if you truly want to feel like a man, you need, and I stress on this, you need to wander. Wandering will teach you something about yourself. The woods and the silence therein, or the life therein, will teach you something about yourself that no book, no guru, and absolutely no video on YouTube will ever teach you, except mine, of course. It's the kind of truth that is felt. It is not, I can't really describe it. It's felt. You feel at one with a grander thing. You feel you're part of something greater than yourself, and that, my friend, is what makes you feel strong. The day you feel like you're part of something bigger and not you being the center of all attention in the world. There is truth in the wilds that is felt, and I cannot narrate it in words, but you feel strong. The kind of strength you'll never feel in a city, no matter how much iron you pump. You'll never feel that kind of strength. It can only be felt in the desolate landscapes, in the woods, in the wilds. Sure, it can be the romantic in me that's talking all about this, but it's definitely worth a try, isn't it? And I think one of the greatest reasons why Indian men are like this is because of their parents, really. See, we all come from first, second generation villagers who came to the city and settled in the city. Maybe third generation. Mine is third generation. So I've been far removed from the concept of a village. When I was young, I didn't have a gaon that I could go back to in my summer vacation. So I envied people who did. Um, anyway, the point is, Indian parents are a little too overtly protective of their children, often fearing mortal danger even if their child loiters outside. Um, they're so overprotective that they never really let their children stretch out their arms entirely. They never let the natural curiosity of a child, they never let the child exploit that natural curiosity. They're always a little too controlling. A very fine example of this is often, from what I've observed, is you would see Indian children um, walking down the street, let's say, as a hypothetical scenario, along with what I've experienced. So you would often see children walking down the street, and let's say they encounter a dog. Now, the first response of an Indian parent is "Patthar maar do, shoo kar do, kaat lega." They instill such a nasty fear in the child of the natural world that children often grow up utterly divorced from any concept of what a natural world is. Compared to, let's say, Americans or even Russians, have this very strong inherent concept of going to the great outdoors. Indians don't have that. It's a relatively new concept where Indians have started hiking and going to the mountains. It wasn't a very common thing a while back. It's relatively new. Now, we don't have that concept of going out into the wilds and experiencing nature in its true, mighty, untamed form. What Indians, the only contact Indians have with nature is maintaining parks. That's the only contact with nature you have. Park maintain kar lo ji, park maintain kar lo ji. Planting trees that are inherently disastrous for the soil, or just planting things for the aesthetic value of it. never letting their children experience anything other than what they want their children to experience. That's one of the greatest reasons why I think Indian men are weak, because we are so out of touch to what essentially makes us feel strong compared to what we think strength is, which is generally what we think strength is looking strong, not necessarily feeling strong. And of course, this sounds very McCandless, but it isn't. So this natural curiosity that you kill amongst your children, what it ends up doing is creating another breed of weakling men and weakling women. I mean, weakling children who grow up to be really, really weak. Their parents didn't have to suffer this malady because their parents generally, most of them, grew up in villages where nature wasn't really far off. But children born in the city, their only experience with the wild is a maintained garden, a manicured, pathetic plastic garden. So this is, of course, my own opinion piece, a rant of sorts. So take it with a grain of salt. But what I think might be useful for you is, let me discuss 10 commandments with you, or 10 rules that I live my life by. Not that they were written before I shot this video, but I sat down and carefully constructed in the last few weeks 10 core ideas that I base my life around. So the next video I'll discuss these 10 ideas that I base my life around. Take what you must from them and leave out the rest. So I hope you enjoyed this rant of mine, and I hope you are still subscribed, even though I'm absolutely irregular and utterly unpunctual in my videos. But I hope you enjoyed this little rant, and I hope to see you the next time. Till then, ramble on.